don't have to ask if we're recording because we are. So we can get started. And then, as I say, people will join us as they will. I'm George Tzougros, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Arts Board. I have the privilege of kicking this off today. And this, the second in the series of town meetings held for the individual artists of our state. So we're really glad you're here, individual artists and creative workers. Our process today is going to be this. We're going to have Karen remind us why we're doing all this. And then I'll say a few words about what Americans for the Arts has found related to artists and the impact of COVID-19. The partners will say a few words, and then we'll go to the list of people who signed up to speak today. Once that list is exhausted, if there's time left, we'll address some of the questions we got with your submission of your registration for this event. So that's what we're going to do. And Karen, I'll turn to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Goeschko, the Assistant Director at the Wisconsin Arts Board. As I said, it's really great to see you all. We thought we'd start off with just a quick reminder, kind of reframing. One of the questions we got when George put out that survey was, what's the purpose of this meeting again? So just to kind of reiterate what we said, I think first time on December 1st, when we had Town Hall 1.0, was one of the main reasons is simply to connect you to each other in a way that you might not all be connecting yet, and to encourage you to think about how you want to connect in future so that we can help make that happen if possible, to hear your concerns and ideas, and to help you figure out how to help make those happen, those ideas, to share what the state level groups, our partners and co-hosts here are up to, how those activities connect with your concerns and ideas, and encourage you to share your expertise with the nonprofit groups, the state level partners here that can help make your ideas happen. The list of partners we'll go through in just a minute, but that's kind of framing the baseline for why we are gathering again. We met first on December 1st. This is the second one. A few months have gone by. The world has shifted again. So checking in again. George, is it okay if I go ahead and just turn to the co-hosts and introduce them and invite them to share a few words in alpha order?
Actually, before we do that, let's talk about the impact that Americans for the Arts has registered about COVID-19, and then we'll go through the list of partners. Because I think, Karen, you noted it, the world has changed again and again. And I'm highlighting this for two reasons. One, so you hear the numbers nationally, and two, to remind you that there's a survey out there on the Americans for the Arts website for artists and creative workers to fill out. We can't give you numbers from Wisconsin because not enough Wisconsinites have filled it out yet. So I encourage you to get out there and fill it out so that you can show the impact on artists and creative workers of our state. But here's what Americans for the Arts has found nationally. Artists, creatives remain among the most severely affected segment of the nation's workforce, having lost an average of $47,564 each in creativity-based income since the pandemic's onset. At the height of the pandemic in 2020, 63% experienced unemployment. As recently as March 2021, the percentage of jobs lost at nonprofit arts organizations is 5 times the average of all nonprofits, 31.8% versus 6.6%. So some more figures for you to think about. 52% have been unable to access or afford food at some point in the pandemic, and 43% have not visited a medical professional due to an inability to pay. 78% have no post-pandemic financial recovery plan. 95% have lost creative income. 74% had events canceled. And Black, Indigenous artists of color had higher rates of unemployment than white artists in 2020 due to the pandemic, 69% versus 60%, and lost a larger percentage of their creative incomes, 61% versus 56%. So just some figures for you to think about. And again, if you'd like to see numbers like that for Wisconsin, filling out the survey on the Americans for the Arts website, and I think we can get that into the chat for you, would be helpful. Now, the next portion is that we're going to introduce our partners. And so what we're asking of our partners is to kind of give you an update of what's gone on since the time we met last. And here's what we at the Arts Board say about ourselves. And then Karen will go through the list. And by the way, partners, if you got something and you want to say, go for it. If you wanted to say pass at this time, you can pass. So the Wisconsin Arts Board did a couple of things. We decided to channel unused folk arts apprenticeship dollars into a newly formed Native American Artist Emergency Grant Program. This was money that comes directly from the Native American Gaming Compact's money that we receive at the Arts Board. Second, taking advantage of a rare opportunity to apply for a creative aging grant that resulted in the development of Wisconsin Telestories, a pilot project with Milwaukee-based Time Slips to hire and train artists to have creative phone conversations that engender art making with older adults in their communities, culminating in a virtual showcase of the resulting artwork in June, and including a best practices in working with older adults session for all artists who are interested in this kind of work, which we'll also offer at a date to be determined. Our artist-focused updates to our COVID-19 resource page, of course, and the continuing posting of artist opportunities in our daily Wisconsin Arts News. We'll post more links of information in the chat, so you'll know where to find the Arts News if you haven't found it already. So those are just some of the things the Arts Board's done since last we spoke, and Karen will turn to the other partners now.
Right. I'm just going to go in alpha order because I want to make the most of this time that we have together. So quickly, Arts Wisconsin, are you on the line here? Board member or Anne? And if not, I know that Anne had something till 4:30, so I'll just skip to the next one then, which is Generator Art.
Hi, yes, I'm Maureen Regali. I am representing Generator Art, Generator Music, as well as the No Studios Artist Grant. And we continue our focus on providing professional development for creative professionals, so visual artists, musicians, and then through the No Studios Grant, filmmakers and performance artists as well. So again, our focus is finding funding to give directly to creative professionals, as well as keeping their businesses afloat through professional development. So we continue to look for additional funding sources, et cetera, for that. That's our update.
I have Generator Music right after that, Maureen.
We're all the same. It's all one organization.
Indeed, thank you very much. The next is Imagine MKE.
Hey, I'll just speak briefly on behalf of the team. So if you're not familiar with us, we are the connector, convener, amplifier of the arts and culture community in Milwaukee. One of our key areas of work is convening our work groups, which we've been doing over the past several months. And so we invite you to join in on that process at any time. We have 4 work groups: support for artists, neighborhood partnerships, marketing, PR, and public policy. You can find out more on our website. We'll drop the link in the chat. And a couple other areas of work that may be of interest in helping inform our work and your work in the coming months. We did recently start an audience research survey with Wolf Brown. So that'll represent 15 Milwaukee-based arts and culture organizations. And as we get some of that data in and can share with you, we'll be reaching out. That'll be helpful in informing when our audiences will be comfortable coming back to in-person programming. We'll also be launching an artist survey soon, so keep an eye out for that. And we are continuing to monitor how we might be able to advocate for allocating ARPA funds for arts and culture. So if you want to take a grassroots action on that right now, you can go to imaginemke.org/act to write our representatives. That's it from us for now. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for putting those links in the chat too,
Yeah,
for sure. If people are interested in any of those 4 areas that you mentioned or the ACT piece, that's great. Mary Nohl, Individual Artist Fellowship Program is next.
Hi, I'm Polly Morris and representing various things. One of the things I've been doing quite a bit of recently is working closely with David Lee at Imagine Milwaukee on this the ideas about reconceiving how we support artists through the ARPA funds and how we look at artist funding in the Metro Milwaukee region. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. Through the Milwaukee Arts Board, we're just in the evaluation phase of our second round of sustaining grants. So normally we get about 40 to 45 applications a year for what used to be project grants. Last year they switched to sustaining grants. These are organizational grants. This year we got 64. So the panel convenes later this week, and we should be handing out money that passes from the NEA to the Wisconsin Arts Board down to the city. So we'll see what happens with that. We've also been doing some professional development work here through Linden and the Nohl program. But most interestingly, and I'd sort of like to turn this over to Rachel Hausman-Schall for a minute to talk about a project we're developing for arts writing in Wisconsin.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm an artist and writer in southeastern Wisconsin. I've been meeting with, so I spoke at the first town hall about something I'm really passionate about, which is increasing arts writing in the community, and specifically, you know, Wisconsin and just in general in the greater Midwest. I don't feel that there is enough of that happening. And it's really valuable for our community and would help strengthen the arts ecosystem. So I've been meeting with some individuals and organizations on this call and working a bit with Polly to start building an arts writing platform. And yeah, I'd love to share more information. I'm a teacher and I work full time, so this is all kind of in the works. And I also have put together just a brief like Google survey kind of interest form. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat for anyone that's just interested in learning more, wanting to be updated or potentially being involved. So I'll go ahead and just drop that in the chat. Thanks, Polly, for the toss over.
Thanks for the report back. That was a great piece from the first town hall. Thanks, Rachel and Polly. Alrighty, then we have the Milwaukee Artist Resource Network. And after that, we have the Wisconsin Academy of Sciences, Arts and Letters, the James Watrous Gallery. And after that, we have the Wisconsin Dance Council.
Hello, we're here. Hi, it's Ann Brusky, and Simone's here too. I see her lovely face. Hello. Feel free to chime in, Simone. So Wisconsin Dance Council, we've been hosting some town halls with artists, and we continue to do that. And during the town halls, we've really discussed the needs and heard from artists. And one response we were able to accomplish and do is with our website. We developed a networking page on our website that artists and collaborators and creatives can put in their information, but also their interests. So if you're looking for grant writers or collaborators in some way, there is a networking page being developed on our website with that. So I'll put that in the link so people can add that. Simone, would you want to add anything else at this time?
No, I think that no. I think that you covered everything, and we had this idea to have a more integrative presence with the community, and the website was our medium to collaborate. So thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne and Simone. All righty, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation.
Hi, hey everybody. I jumped in 10 minutes late into this call, so I'm gonna just give a couple updates. I think that's what we're doing. Thanks, George, appreciate that thumbs up. I didn't get the assignment at the start. We are real busy right now prepping for what we believe is the coming of our ARPA dollars to our state. Folks likely have followed the news that the $3.2 billion coming to the state, Governor Evers has committed 2.5 of that to our economic and community development recovery. What we know so far is not full details for sure, Treasury has not yet released guidance of those dollars and how they'll be used, and nor are the dollars in state yet. So, but we want to make sure that we're not resting on our laurels. And so the governor has already announced last week a $420 million program to support existing small businesses to really round and come out of the pandemic. It will not be that dissimilar from the We're All In grants, if you recall those. WDC will administer those in partnership again with Department of Revenue. And so that's a big program, and more to come when details come. The other program, I think, relevant to a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly those who have interest in figuring out ways once we're back, really coming out of the pandemic, and interested in getting back into some brick and mortar spaces. One of the lessons of the pandemic are how disproportionately impacted our brick and mortar businesses, particularly in the retail and service spaces, have been. And so there was a Wisconsin Tomorrow a Main Street Bounce Back program that has committed $50 million in $10,000 flat grants. So those businesses who are either existing and expanding into spaces that have been vacant, or new businesses that are opening in vacant spaces. And so we're still waiting for those details. We are building the bones of those programs now, waiting to see how we'll have to adjust those programs when we see Treasury's guidance. And that amounts to some portion of the governor's announcement of $600 million to support small businesses of the 2.5. The governor also announced a $50 million pledge for equitable recovery, and we expect that that $50 million will cross-cut many different parts, but certainly will also include our diverse and Black and Brown BIPOC-owned businesses. And all of these programs, just because we know how many artists have been impacted, artists as businesses have been impacted, when these programs are announced, detailed, I'll be getting back in touch with this group to kind of really provide those details, ask you to be parts of our boots on the ground, to connect with as many business owners and arts business owners across our state. So more to come. Those are the details I have today.
Thank you. We will share those further details out when you make them available. Thanks, Sam. Yep. All right, Wisconsin Visual Artists is next.
Hello, my name is Allie Wilbur. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Visual Artists. A few updates from us since the last meeting. Some things that stood out to us that we were hearing are relating to, first of all, arts writing. So I think at the forefront of our minds, we're thinking more about how to have fair representation across the state. There was some talk about things being a little heavier in Milwaukee and Madison, and people who don't live in those areas having a hard time knowing what was going on or finding opportunities. So I think through our publications and through thinking about paying people to do arts writing and sharing that through our channels, that's one way that we can address that, being a little more thoughtful about statewide representation in our programming. We actually are hosting a program tomorrow with people from Madison, Milwaukee, Northern Wisconsin, throughout the state of Wisconsin, on artists as advocates for others and for artists and for themselves. Something else that we've been in conversation about that's still in some working stages is discussion about the 2022 biennial and how we can offer some scholarship for underrepresented artists to apply to the biennial, and how we can make that a little more available to artists.
Thank you, Allie. Would you please put the link to tomorrow's session in the chat too? That's going to be a really strong one, I think. I'm so glad you're doing that. All righty. Next is Wisconsin Alliance of Composers.
Sorry, having a little problem with the mute button. This is David Bond. I'm the president of the Wisconsin Alliance for Composers. Since December, things have actually been kind of fallow for the group. In December, we had just finished our Young Composers Contest judging and so forth, and the winning pieces are posted on our website. Since a lot of our focus is actually putting on concerts, that hasn't really been all that feasible. So we're hoping that things will change, and we'll soon get a concert or some sort of concert series up and going.
Thank you, David. All right, and then Wisconsin Writers Association.
Hi, I'm Barry Wightman. I'm the president of the Wisconsin Writers Association. And since our last get together in December, we've consciously shifted a focus, elevated the content of some of our events and workshops and things like that to the more practical, perhaps a less emphasis on character development and or setting and plot and all that kind of stuff that our folks are into. But we had a big event on April 10th. Almost an all-day event, all Zoom, and we had a lot of folks and people were into it. It was about okay, you've written something, now what? What are you going to do? Where can you get it out there? And we're going to keep doing that. We've got another session, another day in June, and then we're planning a big one in October. Same kind of thing, and more practicality. And I think people responded well to what we did this month, and we're going to keep on doing it. And we're also focused, refocusing, trying to get better at diversity. I think we need to do that, and we're working on it. So that's what's been going on at WWA.
Thanks, Barry. If you have the dates for upcoming things that you could put into the chat, or just simply the link to your
Sure.
to the page where they'd find that, that'd be great. Thank you. And I see Arts Wisconsin. So Anne.
Thank you, Karen. Sorry I was late. I had another call that went till just before I got on. So I'm sorry I didn't hear everybody's updates, but I'll just say, but I look forward to the conversation for the next hour. We have been moving full speed ahead on the advocacy front with the state budget, with ARP funds, with general information and research about the state of the art of the creative sector at this moment in time and into the future. April has been Creative Wisconsin Month, and we have hosted a series of conversations on everything from young arts leaders to funding to, as Ali said, artists as advocates, which is happening tomorrow. So we've been partnering with the Wisconsin Visual Artists, which we're very happy about, or Wisconsin Philanthropy Network, lots of different people and institutions from around the state. So tune in. I'll see if I can put the link in the box for what's happening this week, but there's a lot going on. And I guess that's it. Thank you all.
Do you have any recordings from the past conversations?
We do. So
that'd be great.
I could put them in the chat, but I can also send it to who's ever going to follow up with information. So I'll put it in the chat.
I think the chat's awesome. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, partners. Did I miss anyone?
I think you did well.
Okay. Then we're going to transition now to the people who said that they would like to speak at this one. We are sticking with the 2-minute time frame, and then we'll go back if we have time, if you'd like to share more, or if you're inspired by other parts of the discussion. But we're going to do 2 minutes per speaker, and then we'll open it up to the group to have a conversation, and then we can go back if we need to. So with apology, my last name is Goeschko, and it is spelled differently than it sounds for many. So with apology to those whose names I will mispronounce, I truly wish that I would get these all right. If I don't, please correct me when you are on, when you unmute. The first person that I have on the list is Benita Boudies. Benita, I'm not seeing everybody on here. I'm hoping you're here and that you can unmute. And if not, I will go back to you. If you come on later. All righty. The next person on the list is Rachel Hausman-Shaw.
Oh, hi.
Hello
Thanks
again.
I spoke briefly just at the beginning, but I'll maybe just give another synopsis. So I'm working with, so since December, I was actually on the call, the Arts Town Hall 1.0, and spoke at that time about my hope for building up arts writing happening in our community and in Wisconsin, and kind of just in general, the greater Midwest, because I feel like there's a real lack of that happening in our community right now. And I think it's very beneficial. And so I've actually been in some really great conversations since that meeting in December with various artists and writers and other creatives in the community, and just kind of trying to keep the communication going about that. I've also met with Polly and a couple of others on the call to discuss building a Wisconsin arts writing platform. So that is in the very early stages, and I kind of just wanted to offer that update, and I will drop in the chat again. I put together just sort of a quick like Google form survey for anyone that wants to share their thoughts about arts writing in Wisconsin, or potentially wants to be updated about this project, or anyone that is interested in like becoming involved, because I think the success of it is going to rely on like the collaborative nature of many of these organizations and people on this call. So I'll just drop that in the chat again, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Rachel. All right, next up is Lee Mathies. And then Alex Franz. And then Catherine Corbin. Yeah, George, if you wouldn't mind looking in the participant list, I need another hand. Is Catherine Corbin on?
Not on the list.
All righty then. Della Wells, I know that she is here. Della, please.
I'm going to keep it short. I just want to say there's a lot of talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And personally, some of us African-American artists, I can't speak for other artists of color, really run away when we hear those words because we don't hear sincerity. So I think the first thing that what should be done is learn and find out what the African-American artists are doing in your state. And don't make assumptions. Because some of us are doing extremely well, some of us are not. But I think people will be surprised what a lot of some of the African-American artists are doing in Wisconsin.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Della. All right, Tom Kastle.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I just wanted to sit in a space, whether it's virtual or not, just with diverse artists, all kinds of different genres and backgrounds, and it feels really, really good. Also to thank Dane County Arts, the pandemic unemployment assistance people who've definitely gotten me through this last year. And I guess a couple of questions when it comes to how to create whatever the new normal is going to be. I've had one of the most successful artist workshops I've ever had in my life, and it took place with the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago virtually, and none of us were looking for more than 20 or 25 people to show up, and we had over 110. And so I'm thinking there's going to be some sort of new normal coming on that's maybe a hybrid of what we're doing right now plus live shows. And then I guess my question to everyone is, how do you address a group, producers or a venue, when we're talking about concerts or plays or theater, when it comes to producing in what a lot of the artists might consider an irresponsible manner, in a way that is not very COVID safe, because maybe they're not in a large metro area. So I'd just love to hear some thoughts on that.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to maybe turn back to you when we get to the general piece and have you reiterate those rather than try to read my notes at that point. All right. Next, Margaret Zaleski. And then Jennifer Bastian.
Nope.
And then Teresa Stevens.
Nope.
Gail Simpson.
Hi, I'm here under the computer that says Eris. So what I was hoping to mention is a program that used to be part of the Percent for Art program, and now it's gone, and I would really love to see this come back, which is the mentorship program. It was a kind of seed project for emerging artists to try to broaden and diversify the pool of artists that participated in the Percent for Art commissions. And I just think that as a tool for keeping emerging artists here in Madison and creating more opportunities for people that haven't thought of themselves as public artists, that was a really effective program. I'd love to see it come back. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next, Jenie Gao.
Hey there. Yeah, so I would like us to reframe our fight for artists as we reopen. Because the arts are chronically underfunded, arts professionals spend a lot of time trying to persuade other people that the arts are important. We wax poetic about the creative economy and the economic impact of the arts for everyone else, but we need to start asking, is all this economic development beneficial for us? We need to connect the economic conversation with the labor conversation. It's flawed to talk about economic development without also talking about labor, because it means people will always be in service of the economy instead of the economy being in service of people. Prioritizing people is necessary to reframe every social conversation. Black Lives Matter is powerful because it centers Black people. Stop AAPI Hate is powerful because it centers Asian people. Trans rights are human rights is powerful because it centers trans people. So in the fight for artists, we need to stop qualifying ourselves with how good we are for the most privileged people. So let's start with what's good for us. Why do predominantly white-led nonprofit organizations deserve artist labor, especially BIPOC artist labor? Why do cities and developers deserve artist labor? What are public and private funding sources doing to give money directly to artists and to give a lot more of it? Dane County, Wisconsin recently added $1 million to their arts budget, but this is still only 1/10 of 1% of Dane County's entire budget, and it's a fraction of the relief funds that are available to other industries. The governor announced another $600 million budget for business relief grants, and yet the Wisconsin state arts budget is still only $750,000 with no formal relief plan specifically for artists. Wisconsin ranks 49th in the nation for arts funding only because Arizona cut their funding to zero during the pandemic. In the long run, we need to talk about what it will take not to pay artists just a livable wage, but a competitive wage. We need to invest real money comparable to other industries. Finally, are we looking at new models that go beyond paying artists to benefit and invest in the community? Because our goal shouldn't just be to succeed in the current system, but to answer the question, how will we be better than the economic systems before us? That is when we will see meaningful change.
Jenny. Christine Booth Furness. Then Barry Wightman. Did you want to add anything else to what you
No,
said
I'm
earlier?
good. I'm
Okay.
good.
All right. Yes, you are. Thank you. Okay. Beryl Lutsky.
No.
All righty. And then Alan Kapishki.
He's there, but he's frozen on my screen. Are you talking, Alan? Can we hear you?
All right. Is it better when I stop my video?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Anybody hear me yet?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Alan. Can you hear us?
All right. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Go
can.
ahead. Just go ahead.
Oh.
Or
All right. I'm going to leave my video off. First, I wanted to thank Jenie for a really important and powerful statement. And I want to make two quick points. One is I'm really concerned about young people. As a teacher of university level young theater artists and arts administrators, I'm worried about last year's and this year's graduating classes and what environment they're going into and what support there is for them. Can anybody hear me? Everything's frozen here.
assume that we can.
Okay, good. The second point I want to make is the We See You White American Theater document was also extremely powerful, brought up some areas that really deserve reconsideration by the theater community, and I think its influence has spread to other arts media as well. And what I've been trying to remind organizations I work with is that there are a lot of issues around gender identity that are very similar and that intersect with these, and to remember the gender identity piece of the equation at the same time as we're reevaluating a lot of these practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And last but not least, Anne, I have you on again. Did you say what you wanted to say earlier, or did you want to add something? Anne Katz.
Oh, me. Just no, I don't have anything to add that has not been said by smarter people. You know, I think we have a great opportunity. We have great opportunities as the pandemic eases and we enter a new world. We just have to be strategic about what that means and how everybody gets to participate. So thank you all for those comments.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. Thank you for putting resources and links into the chat, whether you're speaking or whether you're not. And at this point, I would like to first just check in and see if there's anyone else who did not sign up who would like to take 2 minutes and share some thinking. And then I'm going to open it, circle back to what Tom Kastle had said earlier with his 2 questions to the group. Okay. Tom, you mentioned an incredibly surprising response to a class that you did with the group in Chicago. And you also talked about venues and responsibility and in this time. And so I wondered, would you be willing to elaborate a little bit on that question?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm mostly a folk performer and I'm also an actor. So in the last year, I've had 5 festivals, 3 plays, a film, and a whole bunch of small folk musical things, you know, fall through. And a lot of them have been trying to address COVID and all the different precautions and responses in different ways. And one of the things I was asked to do is due to the viral nature of the sea shanty phenomenon on TikTok and on the web, I was asked to give a pretty in-depth workshop on sea music. And we were expecting 20, 25 people and got over 110, which made everybody involved in the project and everyone I've talked to think about that perhaps when we do start doing live performances again, maybe we are in maybe a hybrid world where we might want to be doing live performances as always, because I don't think there's a substitute for it. But if you're on another continent and are interested in the art that's going on in the Midwest or New York or California or Venezuela, wherever you are, why should we give up that access as well? So I think maybe we should try to imagine a different take on a lot of that stuff. And then the other thing that came up is on one movie shoot and then a couple performances, there was at least one company that I turned down because they weren't doing things I didn't think safely. In fact, one tried to do a performance outside Dane County just to get away from the mask mandate that we have here. And I think there should be sort of an artist-generated set of conditions or suggestions that are from the CDC or from, the different agencies, but also from an artist point of view of what you feel comfortable with. And maybe suggestions on how to talk to a producer, how to talk to a granting agency, to convey those concerns in in a more succinct artistic manner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot, so I'd like to open this up to others who would like to respond or add on to what Tom just brought to the group.
I was certainly going to ask the question, does anybody know of something like that where artists have generated that kind of thing, whether it's through one of the unions or otherwise?
I've only heard discussion, sort of online discussion about, let's say like a theater company saying, we've been doing nothing but online performances, and maybe we might consider continuing to do a virtual link with perhaps all our performances. So maybe we're looking at something different.
Yeah, the chat certainly seems to underscore the hybridization of the work in many of the disciplines as we move forward into this next phase, for sure. George, your question about unions certainly is, I know I've seen something from Actors Equity, but there are probably different sets of guidelines from different groups and groups of artists. My sense is that we have as many kinds of artists as we have as many kinds of people, right? So we have people all along the spectrum of what they're comfortable with. So it'd be interesting to hear other thoughts from this particular group of Wisconsin artists on what your thoughts are related to that. If anyone is comfortable sharing with your voice or in chat. And if you're not, then I am happy to move on to a few other things that I heard.
Hey everybody, David Lee from Imagine MKE. Just a quick thought on that. Like what we've been hearing is that a number of the different performing arts unions nationally, right, have different sets of conditions, and also in addition to the trades groups, right, also have different requirements. So coordinating all of these together, at least in the performing arts world, has been a bit of a challenge. What we've also heard have been from some of the performing arts centers that are outside of the boundaries of Milwaukee have what we've learned have been a little bit kind of like they've never closed, and what they've deferred to have been some of the CDC guidelines as sort of a standard. And so obviously, this call has brought together a bunch of different artists from a bunch of different disciplines. So I think it's sort of coming together with sort of deferring to the most basic kind of guidelines from a federal regulatory agency seems to make the most sense.
Thank you, David. Dasha, did you have something you wanted to share, please?
Absolutely. Hello, good people. Just celebrating all of this creative genius and fight. I am so serious, Jenie. I will vote for you. Run for everything. We need that kind of honesty in places where people are hiding from that kind of light. As your state poet laureate, I wanted to share with you the project that I'm working on. I'm in the development phase, and I'm so excited. Part of that development, I was literally on the phone with some incarcerated committee members earlier today. So statewide, as Poet Laureate, my project is called Alignment. Alignment. And there'll be a series of prompts. There'll be 10 prompts that will be shared at the end of the summer. And these will all be lines of poetry that are pulled from the anthology that our prior laureate prepared with our Madison laureate, the Sheltering in Poem, excuse me, Behind This Door. So there'll be 10 poets, lines of poems, but the world won't know that. When you see just a random, lyrical, beautiful line of text, you don't know what it means, so you get to decide what it means. You will write a poem and you'll send it in, and then in return, you receive in the mail a poem to the same prompt from an incarcerated writer. And at the end of this series, all of these poems will be gathered and clustered and published as chapbooks. There'll be a secondary process that will narrow all these poems down to a published anthology, which will include new Cento poems by me. And that Cento poems, I'm going to pull language from all the poems that weren't selected. I will combine them and make new poems so that everyone will be represented in some fashion. So along the way, what I'm most excited about is that this is, yes, a poetry exchange. Yes, there'll be a book that'll happen. Yes, we're celebrating poetry. More importantly, we are having an ongoing conversation about incarceration. We are humanizing writers across the state, and we are creating a coalition that is going to invite jobs. I'm not going to fold up and package up all these poems. So we're going to hire formerly incarcerated coordinators to help be the fulfillment center. We already have a formerly incarcerated computer team, developers that have already started building a portal. So who's got $20,000 they can loan me to make this happen? Yeah, send me a DM. And additionally, we're working with the Department of Corrections to create workshops and trainings and coordinated with the facilities so that our incarcerated writers have what they need to prepare. One of the partnerships already talking to Barry and WWA about how do we have a partnership of writers across the state who are able to provide virtual workshops. Here's a prompt, give me a 15, 20, 30-minute writing exercise of any genre that we can then provide as a resource into the DLC. So I've definitely taken down the notes of Rachel and Allie. I'll be stalking you soon, because magazine writing, there's so many things that we can offer. And one of the conversations that has opened is we are willing to invest in training and programs and resources that lean into communities and demographic deficiencies. So in the DLC, they get classes for AODA, they get classes for being better parents, they get classes for all of their ills and trials. We're going to talk to them now about investing in things that are also going to fill their soul. You know, how to write, how to think, how to plan, all of those types of work. So if you are on board, if you are excited, you want to learn more things about that, please send me a message. We're moving to the point of figuring out how to turn this into a statewide volunteer bonanza. I don't know how to do that. I know how to make programs. So this has been an exciting growth experience and opportunity for me as well to for real look across the state and know that I don't have to make this happen by myself, which 20 years of working as a community artist, of working as a teaching artist, of going through all of the headaches and heartaches that Jenie and Della have referenced, of doing the most with a nickel. I'm not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. Y'all aren't doing that anymore. So let's all rally up and shake down some money and come together. The excitement of being able to do this together is what really just makes me light up every day. So hit me up, and that's what we're doing. That's what your state is doing. That's what poetry is about to make happen. Thank you for
Dasha. Would you please, lots of responses in the squares on my screen here. Would you please go ahead and put in the chat a way for people to get a hold of you? Whatever you're comfortable putting in there would be awesome. Thank you.
I think, Dasha, you and Jenny should be on the same ticket, and then we got everything taken care of. It's all good.
Jenny, you and I'm going to maybe out you a little bit with Sam and just say that you and Sam were talking in an earlier conversation about your interest in getting some specific statistics and information from I think it was WEDC, maybe it was the Department of Labor. I can't quite remember the details of the conversation,
Yeah,
but I know that you two connected, and just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, including Karen. I don't even know what you're talking about. Next person, please. Whatever.
Yeah, actually, Sam, yeah, this would be a great time to follow up on that. I believe the WEDC was going to separate out some data specifically for people who fall under the Artist Next Code and who got grants under the Artist Next Code. Is that correct?
Yeah, when we followed up with DOR and got down to one level, I think I sent you some of that info and did not get down to the most granular level yet.
Yeah, because I think we had 3 digits, right? And it included included sports in there, so you weren't able to get like a layer deeper to artists specifically.
Yet I haven't. I have an inquiry in for DOR for that, and don't have it yet. So the request is still pending, and I'll follow up on it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, appreciate that. So yeah, so there's your answer as far as data on which artists, how many artists got the WEDC grants, and how many applied to, I think was the other thing we're looking for, how many artists applied and how many got awarded the grant. So that would come from the WEDC. As far as the question of labor, I don't know if Maureen from Generator is still here. We did meet with one of her colleagues at Generator, and the short version of it is that labor data doesn't exist. There is no labor data on how much labor artists have done, and certainly none on how much unpaid labor there is. But yeah, that data does not exist. So we know what we have to collect, and I don't know what the answer is in terms of what platform, which organization. It sounds like the Labor and Workforce Department is quite behind on PUA payments and unemployment in general. They're pretty swamped with that during COVID. But it does seem to be a gap in Wisconsin and other states as well, as far as like what labor data are we actually collecting. And the question that I posed in that meeting, and this is where you and I, Sam, talked as well about work at the WEDC. But the question I posed was, like, is there anyone doing the work to connect economic impact with labor, with well-being of labor? Do we have any stats on that? Do we have any stats on how people in different industries are doing? For instance, how restaurant workers are doing, like not just how well the food industry is doing, but is that economic impact actually reaching the people working in that industry? For the arts, not just how the arts industry is doing, not just how the arts industry is impacting the rest of the economy, but how are artists doing at the same time as we are supposedly reaping these benefits economically as a state? That's the question. And yeah.
That's a super interesting question, right? Folks, and I'll put this into the chat box, but there, earlier this month, WDC issued a report, Wisconsin Tomorrow. And I think what you're hearing, at least rhetorically, from WDC, even from the governor's office, is not a focus on merely the industry, but on economic well-being, which is focused at center on people. And Jenny, that's your point. That is, our industries may be doing well, but if all of the fruits of our industries, if they don't get down to the actual people in those industries, what are we doing, right? Are we having impact? That's a super fair question. I don't know, WDC doesn't typically have tools yet at this point that measures that. I think we're at a place in our development and our maturation that we just put out a report. Again, I'll put it in there that we're waking up a bit to recognize that you might have economic indicators that are all strong, but what does that mean about well-being? And the well-being is much broader than that. So you might have economic figures, whether it's GDP or unemployment rates or things like that, that say one thing, But if folks don't have it, I've seen in the chat, access to internet, access to broadband, access to affordable childcare, access to transportation, then what's the appropriate measure? We don't have that well-being data. It's a newer concept within economic development, I would argue, but it's something that it's where we're pushing.
Both for that. That was really helpful. George, do you have a sense that Americans for the Arts is, excuse me, following up with some of their studies and work in artists and labor to gather some, not only some information, but to start moving toward where both Jenny and Sam were talking about being?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as they get to the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, which is the next economic impact study, they'll be hard pressed to go forward without that information. And I think the other thing that I read early on in this meeting, where they were talking about the impact of COVID on the artists, is them trying to get their arms around what's going on. And so I think that that's something that they want to get to. I also would point, I was just about to put in the chat, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies Arts Messaging Guide, which is the arts and creativity strength in our nation. And one of the points that they make there is well-being. They talk about well-being and how important that is. But I think what I think is wonderfully underscored by Jenny's comments, and I think everybody on this call, is to say well-being for who, right? If it's well-being for the audience, if it's well-being for the community, but the artist's well-being is not taken into consideration, then that's an empty talking point. And so I'm going to put it in the chat, and I think we need to look at it together and say, did they miss that point? And if they did, that's something we can feed back up through the system. The other thing I was going to point to is, as we talk about the funds that are coming, the Arts Board is going to get money from the relief plan as well. It'll be double what we got for CARES, almost double what we got for CARES. But here's the real challenge, and this is something from a policy perspective we need to have you all help us fix. The National Endowment for the Arts can't give money to individual artists. Now, why is that a problem for us? Well, as we learned recently, that means we can't give money to individual artists with the money we use to match. And as you all know from the conversations we've had in the past, our money right now at the state level is simply what the feds are giving us, right? In the past, we were investing in Wisconsin as we should, and then we got money from the federal government. In 2011, it came down to a match, which means we can't spend our money, Wisconsin's money, on artists because it's matching federal money, which doesn't allow it. So it's a long-term thing. This is not something that's going to change overnight, but it's something where artists have to advocate with groups like the NEA to make those changes. And unfortunately for them, they're going to turn around and say to you, yes, that's something you're going to have to take up with the Congress because they're the ones that put this restriction on us. So I just put it out there to let you know that the money's coming, but that the long-term vision here has got to be, and you can probably speak better to this than I, the advocacy piece with the Congress to say, yes, give money to arts, give money to arts organizations, sure, but clear the space to fund the generators of creativity, which of course is the 21st century, right? So the artists themselves, the fundamental person, the creative worker, needs to be compensated appropriately and needs to be given seed money to do the creative work that they really would like to be able to do and to take care of their well-being.
Can I say something for a minute?
Sure, of course.
So certainly reviewing these Milwaukee Artist Board grants applications has made me think, as it always does, of the need for universal basic income for artists and others. And of course, the city has similar problems giving money to individuals because they get a lot of their money from you, and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And what, in reviewing what's been going on with arts organizations in Milwaukee over the past 12 months, it's clear, that most independent contractors have been laid off. Administrative staff is preserved. A lot of funding is going to paying landlords and accountants to cover the overheads that every 501c3 has in order to stay in operation. And a kind of disappointing amount of this money is filtering down to the artists themselves. At the same time, we're seeing a resurgence of some kind of talk about labor issue in the arts in Milwaukee. The number of people who are expected to be underpaid and under benefited because they're pursuing their passion and therefore they don't really deserve a livable wage. But, it's hard to know where the convening needs to take place for these people who are operating below the level of the major professional unionized organizations, and how these people can come together and understand that these problems prevail across the disciplines and across the fields, and that organizing needs to be done cross-sector, and that, we are not just a lot of individuals running around with our own little problems, but that these are very common problems and they need to be tackled collectively.
You mentioned Anne, thank you, Polly, earlier, and Anne, is your hand up, or am I misreading that icon?
It is.
Awesome.
No, that's weird. It's black. I don't know why that is, but I can just say quickly that the meeting that I was at before this was the coalition of statewide organizations like Arts Wisconsin in the Upper Midwest, meeting with Arts Midwest, which is the regional organization. And this is pretty much what we talked about, the lack of research about all of the issues that we've all mentioned, plus everything else to help put together with the stories that make it clear. There's not time to talk about the advocacy that needs to be done. Is I think there are more opportunities to make this case than there have been. Coming out of a pandemic and building a new world, we are working hard to make the case that new world is based on creativity and the people that unleash it. So I don't have any specific short answers. Thank you, George. Right now, but this is something that we're working on, and we'll bring you all in.
And I'm sorry, just to build on that, Anne, really quickly, I also wonder, while there's ARP dollars to be sort of allocated, right, that we're sort of trying to figure out, I also wonder how potentially the potential upcoming infrastructure bill kind of does the thing that we all have been talking about, right? That there's going to be an influx of money to do infrastructure, potentially in the coming quarter, but hopefully. And how do we, right, with Sam and others, sort of position the work of our sector as a way to plug into that, sort of as a outcome of whatever this current organizing plan is to allocate ARP funds, right? So it's almost like a dress rehearsal for the real win, which could be these infrastructure dollars coming down the pike.
Which is the Marshall Plan for the arts, right? But yeah, David, we need to talk.
It really makes me wonder whether there is anybody out. We often refer back to the New Deal, right? The New Deal for the arts, because artists were put to work in infrastructure projects back in the 30s to make things happen. And while we touch on it, I don't know has anybody heard of anybody actually doing anything about it to structure that kind of proposal for a state or a local government, or even for the feds for that matter.
I don't think I'm talking out of school to share that we've been having some conversations locally here in Milwaukee about that, and it's been met with some anxiety and some support. And for those who are Milwaukee stakeholders on this call, please reach out to me, because we're going to need, over the next month or two, we're going to need everybody sort of pulling in the same direction and in how we get some of these ARP dollars to fund artists to do creative things. But, again, I think, and Polly would be able to share too, I think some of the conversations we've had have been surprisingly not supportive, and some of the conversations have been surprisingly supportive. So I think it's going to be a bit of sort of raising our voice collectively to make sure that our local elected officials understand how important this is.
And I'm interested, David, if you're willing to say it without attribution, where is the anxiety that you're hearing, and where is the lack of support coming from where you would have expected it to be? Because I think that's instructive to all of us.
Yeah. I will say that we had somebody mention that they would never support a universal basic income program, even tied to a specific sector. And then we kind of talked a little bit more about how we could potentially fund artists to do sort of residencies, essentially. And that sort of softened the idea, right, of just paying people $12,000 to X thousand a year to do something. So that was surprising, and I think we're trying to figure out how we kind of maneuver around some of these institutional roadblocks here, especially given that Milwaukee got the 12th most local aid allocation in the nation, and they did not utilize any of the CARES dollars to fund arts and culture in our city. I think there's some opportunity, right, to utilize some of these funds to ensure that our sector gets the money it needs to restart effectively. But then also, I think, again, going back to this organizing question, I still think the infrastructure opportunity is the biggest one, right? And I think some of our local elected officials have realized that too. And so the feds need to pass it, and we need to make sure that the Marshall Plan for the Arts actually gets put into place.
But I think we should use that.
Yeah, sorry. We need to be very careful that we don't get the cheapskate version of the WPA, because, I think part of what we're hearing is, oh, $12,000, that's a job for an artist for a year. And it's not.
Thank you.
I also, a good point, Polly. David. Can I just say one more thing, Karen? I also think that it behooves us, and this is a fine line, to make this part of the conversation about the $15 minimum wage, and the fact that one of the many things that the pandemic revealed, which we knew already, but somehow we could ignore it, was the lack of a social safety net or a social infrastructure that helps every American, and particularly those that don't have a salaried job with benefits, have dignity in their, have enough money to live on. I mean, to me, yes, we're advocating for that creative sector, and we need to make sure that it's not the arts are over here and they need to get special money. I'm exaggerating for effect, but it's, every person in this country needs to be able to feed their family and pay their rent. And therefore we are part of that coalition that's talking about the arts workers that are as much a part of that coalition as anyone else. And to me, that's a powerful argument.
Karen, before you spin to the questions at hand, I just would button it with this story, which I may have told before, but we were doing a meeting in Eau Claire, and we were waxing, as Jenny would say, poetic about the creative economy, how important it is, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the guys got up and he stood up and he said, I understand you're talking about this creative economy, but you're forgetting about the people at the center of it, the artists. He said, there are people here in Eau Claire who play with the band Bon Iver, of course, Grammy Award winning Bon Iver, that couldn't make their rent at that time. And so while we have this notion, and again, the beauty of the creative economy, and yes, it's beautiful, but if the people who are making it beautiful are not appropriately compensated, then it's just not the way it should be done. And I think we all agree there. Karen, you had something.
I find myself going back to what Polly said about collective action and wondering who helps to focus that. I find myself remembering David saying, if you're in the Milwaukee area, reach out to me because, we need to be rowing down the same direction. And David, if you're going to be putting out information that everybody in Milwaukee is going to be getting through your website or email or whatever, awesome. If there is another way that you'd like to gather that kind of energy and put your contact into the chat, that would be awesome too. Trying to make sure that there's nobody in the middle keeping information from each other at this point. And then going back to what Jenny had said earlier about why do cities deserve artists' work? Or why do communities or why do industries or whatever? So flipping that question a little bit, certainly making a strong living wage is important. There are more nuances to it, I think. So, so before I transition to another theme I heard, which was mentorships, I wondered if anyone had anything more to add to this particular thread.
It's interesting, as you said that, I was thinking of the ask not what you can do, your community can do for you, but what you can do for your community. And I think that that's the basic transaction that the artist has. Well, I'm going to help my community, but it's time for the community to look back and say, and we're going to compensate you appropriately for that. Because Polly said it, in passing, but it's really true. You do something you love. Therefore, you don't need to be compensated. You're intrinsically compensated. So and as artists will tell you, I can't live on exposure, and I can't live, I'm not going to feed my family on, that intrinsic value. So I do think it's important, as we're talking these talks, like we're talking about community development through the arts, that we can, the Arts Board, Arts Wisconsin, Imagine MKE, can lead with that as part of the conversation. We believe in community development for the arts, with the arts, and that we fundamentally believe that the artist needs to be appropriately compensated. Jenny, you mentioned the project last time where people were getting involved at city planning levels and arguing that the artist should be compensated. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely so. So
yeah, I would add everybody on the co-host list actually to that as people who would move that forward.
Indeed.
Just readdressing the mentorship idea that was brought up, I would be interested in hearing more from the people that brought up that subject, and anyone else here who has thoughts about mentorship programs that they've seen before that have worked well or what they would like to see. It's something that piqued my interest, and I would like to dip more into that realm.
Awesome.
And set up something solid for it. So I'm going to throw my email in the chat for anyone
thank you.
who wants to send my way about that.
Thank you, Allie. I was hoping that it would pique your interest. And I know that the Milwaukee Artist Resource Network has been engaged in a mentorship program for a while. So I was hoping that we might hear from them today, but there's information there to be shared. That just going a little bit deeper, and Gail, if you wanted to share a few more pieces about what you felt were strongest within the Percent for Art mentorship project of established public artists who have a community process or not, and who have been doing work in that realm, nurturing, helping, mentoring the artists who are interested in moving into that space, and the few years that we were able to do that. I'd love your perspective. And then I know that mentorship kind of came up in December as well, as how can we connect with the younger artists who are in our communities right now because of the pandemic and a set of other situations that have brought them here. So yeah, Gail, not to put you on the spot, but if you are still on the call.
And she's, unfortunately, she's not.
She jumped, okay.
Yeah, but we can connect Allie with Gail and she can follow up there for sure.
Yeah, and Allie also Marn. But others on this call, have there been, and you talked about kind of a technical assistance page where you're connecting artist to artist, but maybe not a formal mentorship program. But are there others who have thoughts
I
on
am,
mentorships?
I am remembering outside of the topic of mentorship coming up, someone brought up concern for young artists, recently graduating or about to graduate artists kind of going into this space. And it's a really unknown territory. And honestly, it just, they need a sense of community, and anyone involved in this call in whatever organization they're a part of, writing, dance, visual art, whatever, is, I'm sure, happy and able to give them any kind of information or answer any questions they have. So don't be afraid, any teachers or students or family members or friends or anyone you know who's kind of at that stage in their career, to just have them reach out. I think you don't know that these organizations are in place and that they do what they do maybe when you're graduated, because you're so focused on trying to find a job and doing your craft. But there's a pretty good support system there, and there should be more mentorship opportunities that should be more widely advertised, and maybe a little less competitive. Anyways,
Sally, I'm so glad you said something about that, because honestly, it made me, I'm trying hard to be disciplined in this conversation, but it did make me think that one thing that the Arts Board could do directly is reach out to the arts programs and arts administration programs that are graduating students right now, all of their students actually, and just send them a, hey, as you transition into your next phase, these are resources, these are organizations to know about. Here's some emails. They are looking for you to connect with them. You would be welcome. And I wonder what you guys think about that as at least one step toward that idea.
Very easy to use in virtual programming and conversation, obviously, right now. So there are the tools. I'll step down from that soapbox now.
Does anyone else want to step onto a soapbox while we have time? We have 10 more minutes before we wind the conversation down. Yes, Tamala, please actually do that. Yeah, that, because I can't see all the screens, but I see you. So please.
I'm sorry. My name is Tammy Strauss. I own the Pink Llama Gallery in Cedarburg. My name is Tamalama on here because I think I was on a personal Zoom call. So I was on my phone before and then I switched over. It's like, ah, crap, it's Tamalama. Anyway, hi, George, how are you? You know, you were talking about mentorships, and I couldn't really do anything because I own the art gallery and I don't have a creative bone in my body. But what do you think about me setting up on a Saturday for a couple of months to check out or test like an artist in residence program or something along the lines for an up and coming artist, a visual artist?
First of all, thank you, Tammy, and go a little bit deeper. Think a little bit more about what you're proposing, and let's see what people say. You don't know.
I don't know, but I was thinking, like on a Saturday, I could set up, you know, like second Saturday of every month, set up a table and a chair for the artists to work, kind of like an open house, and show the public what they're working on. And it would get a way to get exposure and possibly some interest in their art. I would not take a commission, and just get them, like, that's why I'm thinking a student or a recent graduate, just the opportunity to work with the public, talking about their art or something like that.
So constructive feedback on the idea.
I think something else valuable that you would have to offer a young artist beyond just putting their work out and selling it and exposure, which could be great. They could sell something and it gives them a little experience in that realm, maybe something to throw on a CV or a resume. But you work with artists, you work in a gallery setting, you can talk to them about, You know, when you see an artist's work, what makes you reach out to them? What kind of applications do you accept? What's the commission split? What are contracts? Kind of these more professional things that they're not taught in school, or they're not taught anywhere. They need to figure it out. They need to learn it. So I think that's some valuable information that you would have to share with them, maybe on a one-on-one training basis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Tammy. Other thoughts from those who are on the call right now? Something you'd be sad you didn't share when the call ended? Something you heard that you want to make sure isn't forgotten?
And were there any subjects, Karen, from the people who didn't attend but gave us their thoughts about what they'd like to make sure were shared?
Well, there certainly were. And they certainly resonate with much of what has been spoken. Sure. I know that there were people who were specifically interested in, as we move into this next, these next few months and these next few years, what are ways to stay safe now and continue to do the work, whatever discipline it is that the artists are working within. Examples of what works, how much it costs, very specific granular questions, but actually not as specific, just that how much it costs, but I'm not quite sure what it is. But ways to stay safe as artists. There were a number of comments that I thought might go straight to the Wisconsin visual artists, just talking about, I enjoy being alone to do my artwork, but I've become stuck over the last year more because of my situation. There's taking care of a partner and home hospice, and just how others are moving through this time and keeping themselves in balance or striving to return to some level of balance. There's interest in, a couple of comments on public art and working on, so in Antigo, working on a mural project for downtown. And I did want to, thank you for asking this, George. I wanted to share a couple things. One is that a couple years ago, out of a conversation that the Arts Board and Arts Wisconsin were having with public artists, Arts Wisconsin created a public arts listserv. And so for those who are really interested in that work, that's Anne, if you wouldn't mind putting information about that listserv in the chat, that would be awesome. And also there's a rural, public art in rural spaces conversation that's happening. They're drawing people nationally, but it's happening out of Reedsburg early next month. And I will put into the chat information about where and when that is going to happen for those of you who are interested in that conversation and collective action in that particular space. I'm seeing good stuff in the chat between people, so yay. Yeah, that's all I have.
So I'm going to ask the question since we're coming down to the last 4 minutes or so. Is this valuable? Should we do it again? Is there a frequency that you would like to see bringing together those tasked with supporting individual artists? And then to Polly's point, is there a place down the road when we can actually do this, that we can bring together people in person and have a conversation and have artists with each other, talking with each other, supporting each other, et cetera? So that's a lot of questions in a row, but interested in your feedback.
Hearing none. I'm not sure whether to take that as a no, not really, or it's 5:30 on a Monday. Just not sure. George, would you please put also in the chat the link to the Arts News, Wisconsin Arts News? It may be that everybody knows about it, but it wouldn't hurt to put it in the record again. There are a lot of those resources that have been referenced including this public art workshop, whatever.
I did, and I'm actually in the midst of doing the one for Reesburg. So there's there's a link. But yes, I put the Arts News in before.
Okay, great. Great.
I just want to say, I think this was a really good meeting. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good thoughts and comments, and I think we ought to do this like on a quarterly basis or so. You know, it was more than a quarter ago that we did the first one, but you know, we need to do it, keep doing it, because you never know.
The conversation did feel a little bit more pointed this time. I think we've maybe funneled down to a couple more important subjects that we all want to touch on. There does seem to be a lot in the group chat. You know, email me, let's touch base, let's converse about these things between organizations, and I think that's incredibly valuable. So I don't think we should stop doing it. How often we do it? We all have a million Zoom meetings all the time. I don't know what's more at this point, but it's valuable.
Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Any other thoughts for the good of the cause before we thank you all very much for spending an hour and a half with us on a Monday in April?
All right. Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening. We'll see
Thank
you again.
you.
Take care, everyone. Bye.